Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. Just want to thank all of our fans and listeners. We really appreciate all the support. You guys are awesome. Super excited for this interview. We have the pleasure today of sitting down briefly to ask a few questions to two people who put big stamps on the business the past few years. Known for Tragedy Girls, VHS 99, and a writer on the new hit Five Nights at Freddy's, director Tyler MacIntyre, as well as writer-producer known for his work on the 2020 smash hit Freaky, the one and only Michael Kennedy. Both are here to promote the RLJE and Shudder release. It's a Wonderful Knife, only in theaters on November 10th, 2023. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. How are y'all doing?
Good. Thanks
Awesome.
for having us. Great intros. I feel legit.
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely have to have you guys on at a later date when we have some more time. But we always start all of our interviews off just by asking, what is it that got you guys into this business?
Well, I sort of grew up drawing a lot when I was a kid, and then eventually started to kind of, take pictures and then make little movies kind of on VHS. And then eventually they just started to get a little bigger, and I started to involve more people, and then it kind of grew from there, and then it sort of spiraled out of control. Really, and then now I can't stop it.
For me, I grew up in a household with 6 other kids. I was one of 7.
Wow.
I am one of 7 still.
Wow.
And so my parents, we never went to the movies. Like, I think I went to 2 movies as a kid. Not a huge movie family. Wasn't allowed to watch a lot of like R-rated stuff. Wasn't allowed to watch horror movies. So I'm a late bloomer to the horror world. But when I was 16, I went and saw Scream in the movie theater.
Nice.
First horror movie I ever saw, and I walked out of that theater completely changed as a person. And I said to one of my friends, I'm going to make movies one day. It was like that big of a movie for me. Like, made me love the genre, made me love the subgenre, made me love just everything. I couldn't get my hands on shit fast enough. And yeah, it was really one of those things where it was literally like, I'm going to do that. Took a while, but it happened.
That's awesome. Scream's actually my favorite horror movie as well. So
yeah, awesome, right?
One of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And as far as this movie goes, I mean, we had the pleasure of, being sent a screener a little early. And just from, my point of view, I mean, we talk, and Dustin can speak to this as well, because me and him talk about it a lot. But, just from my point of view, we talk about the state of movies in general, and the sequels and prequels and basically draining an IP to its last drop a lot. I mean, this film was so, I mean, to use a pun, wonderfully unique. I mean, can you tell us a little bit how this story came to be and really fall into y'all's laps?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I'm kind of making a little lane for myself and taking old comedies or old classics and turning them into horror movies, which is not so unique when you describe it that way. But once you kind of take something old and make it new again, it becomes kind of it gets a life of its own. So for me, I had such a blast making Freaky. I got to make my first movie with Chris Landon, who's just a king, and he's so good. Happy Death Day, I think, really set the tone for these types of movies.
I agree.
And he started out as a mentor and has become a very good friend in the process, and we still work together to this day. But I loved every aspect of that movie. And then I had a really bad experience on a movie after that, where it just, on Freaky, it was my first movie, but Chris made me feel so important and involved, and that I had a voice in the process. And then to go from that to a situation where I didn't have any of that as a writer, it really kind of hurt, even though that's pretty normal. So when I sat down to write the movie, this movie, I sat down telling myself I wanted to write a Christmas horror movie. I was like, bar none, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to set myself in the world of Christmas because I love Christmas movies, I love horror movies, and I wanted to do both. And I just started reflecting on my time of Freaky while I was brainstorming ideas. And I was like, you know what? Like, let's try to catch lightning twice. So, and then I immediately thought, well, It's a Wonderful Life was my dad's favorite movie. It was a Kennedy staple in the house. Like, what does that look like as a horror movie? So when I sat down to kind of think, like, what does a horror movie look like? It really started clicking in my head that there's like a story there, and a modern story to tell through, as Tyler brings up in a lot of these interviews, like, It's a Wonderful Life is really a Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of riffing on Dickens. So
right.
it was kind of fun to update something old and make it new. And I think people are loving these types of movies because they're new, but they're also super familiar, which makes you feel really comfortable. And it makes you feel like you're part of it, and that you know, like the extra layer that these movies have by knowing the past.
Right.
I think it makes the viewer feel more involved, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tyler, I mean, can you speak to your part of it maybe a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I definitely like I love making horror movies, and a lot of the ones that I've made are kind of horror comedies, and
Right.
with that comes a fair amount of like, my sort of sense of humor and a lot of the satire in it. And I sort of bring that particular lens to things. But what I really liked about this story was that it's more sincere than the stuff I tend to write. Like it definitely really meant it. Like it has this uplifting kind of heart to it that I thought was, an interesting challenge for like a movie that's a pretty roller coaster slasher movie, and like what I love about making horror comedy specifically is that like, you can it's such a tough balance, and a lot of people get really thrown by that. Like both like usually on the page, people are like, "I'm supposed to be laughing or the scare," like they really freak out about it. And but when you're watching it, it's the most natural thing in the world, and I think it is. Like and horror audiences are so loving and in a way that they like when they sit down at somewhere like Beyond Fest, they really want your movie to be good, and they really want to like it. And so like having like defining your sandbox for them, being like, this is a cabin in the woods, this is a home invasion, this is a slasher, this is a or like this sort of or like our movie where it's you have this supernatural wish and that's the game. That's enough of a hook, and they're like, no, don't tell me anymore. I want to sit down and see how you do it. And that's like what you don't get that in dramas. You don't have a bunch of people like like leaning in and really rooting for you to tell them a fun movie or tell them a fun story. And that's what I think is a rewarding part of it. And I think it's a figuring out new ways to spin and reset the table is part of the fun of it, because I do think it's like an infinite thing.
Absolutely. And you kind of brought up the Scream a little bit. Are there in particular, I mean, I saw a lot of them. I felt like I saw a lot of them, but are there horror influences that, either directly or indirectly, affected your direction when you were writing or even directing this one?
I mean, for me, there's definitely anytime I think you kind of do somewhat of a whodunit in the modern era, it's just, it's a reflection of Scream. Tyler and I have talked about how people almost mistakenly confuse the whodunit as like the normal template for a slasher, but it really wasn't like that until Scream. Scream was so iconic that people forget. Before then, there was maybe a handful of whodunit horror movies. In the 70s and 80s, they were mostly, kids in perilous situations that they didn't know it, as opposed to the whodunit. So yeah, I mean, for me, seeing Scream first, it made me a whodunit junkie. So and Freaky isn't a whodunit. So when I sat down to write this, I knew I wanted it to be a whodunit because it would play into the wish in a way. Like you'd find out who the killer was 20 minutes into the movie, but it also plays with that aspect. I don't know. The thing about these movies that I love is it kind of gives you a familiarity, but it keeps the audience a little bit like left of center or right of center, And so you play up this whodunit aspect and you reveal the killer 15 minutes into the movie, which is different, so it was exciting to kind of look at it that way, like almost like an anti-Scream.
Yeah, and it also creates this really interesting kind of next 20 minutes, because like the movie, like you kill the killer, 15 minutes in the movie, and then you get to see kind of what happens after. People, at the end of Scream, people, Sidney Prescott isn't like, oh man, 5 of my friends are dead, like high five, let's move on. She's not like it, there's definitely has some gravity to it, and I like the fact that like our next, the rest of the first act of our movie kind of unpacks that, and you see the trauma that Winnie's sort of living with, and then takes it somewhere else, and then allows that to kind of pay off in a different way.
So this cast is full of, get into It's a Wonderful Knife more in depth. This cast is full of pretty big names to the genre, and really just in general. You got Justin Long, who jokingly gets killed off gruesomely in like every movie he's in, with Barbarian being the most recent, but of course Jeepers Creepers and Tusk. Catherine Isabel from Ginger Snaps and Freddy vs. Jason, Joel McHale. This cast goes on and on. Can you talk a little bit about working with some of these people, especially Jane Widdop, who did so fantastic in this movie, and Justin Long, who just seems to be always on point with every performance?
Yeah. I mean, Jane came on very early. We really, I saw them in Yellow Jackets, and they did it. Which, if you guys haven't seen that, like, they are tremendous and a big part of that first season of that show. And they just did like a really amazing like self-tape that kind of was that sort of end of the first act scene where they end up, kind of in this alternate reality, and really seem to get the balance of that, like that it's actually this big kind of magical ask you're making of the audience, but really landed it in a way that allowed you kind of, that it's like that Marty McFly in Back to the Future kind of thing, like, like it's still fun, but you kind of get the gravity of it. And we kind of were like, well, that's it, let's just build a cast around what they're bringing to the table here. And we really did, like, especially the younger performers. And like the main kind of relationship in this movie is really about Bernie and Winnie, who are the two characters. And Jess McLeod, who plays Bernie, was somebody we had to look, kind of high and low for. Like, we considered a lot of different performers. I met with a lot of people, did a lot of callbacks. And then, but Jess seemed to have like the, this kind of eccentric energy. And I'd seen them before in One of Us is Lying, which is like this Peacock series that's like this sort of kind of a young adult mystery series. And they are just like scene stealing left, right, and center in that show. And so I knew they had, kind of chops, but then once I saw Jess and Jane kind of together, I really knew we could kind of build it around their chemistry. And like Joel, came on early, like and Joel McHale's like such a sort of a heavyweight comedian, and really has that assumption about him. And we were like, no, we're going to have you play Hallmark Dad, and kind of bit of a lighter kind of approach to him. And then he has some more dramatic colors and more dramatic scenes kind of as the movie goes on, and he really tuned into the weirdness of it.
Love Joel McHale.
Yeah, and then Justin, like, he's just like a obviously like a big staple of horror movies and horror comedy specifically, but came in with like a lot of ideas. And like, what was the and we talked a lot of references, like, what was the guy he was a big inspiration for him?
Joel Osteen. You guys familiar with Joel Osteen? That was Justin's kind of template for pretty funny.
That's perfect.
Now I can't unsee it now.
Right, no doubt.
Yeah, we got so when Justin was negotiating, he kind of had this thing where, through his agent, he's like, well, Justin kind of wants to do a certain thing with the movie. And we were told, fake teeth, blue contacts, blonde wig. We're all just kind of like, the fuck? Like, what does that even mean? And then, like, the more we thought about it, the more we all started going, okay, this is a really interesting choice. And then we got word that like Joel Osteen was literally his template. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that motherfucker is like the perfect example of what I wrote. Like, I couldn't have put it in better words. And it was just like, he took what I wrote, which is a little more boomer and a little bit more insidious, and kind of did it with this, like, fuck you sweetness to your face. Yeah. That he kind of plays in the movie, and this, like, charming, smarmy, large adult son type character. I don't know. Right. He brought something that you just can't really explain. It's just so fucking weird. It's so weird, but I love it. I can't imagine anyone else doing it, and I can't imagine the character being any other way at this point.
Oh yeah, and those teeth were perfect. I mean,
they're disgusting.
They were like, oh God, they're perfect.
Those teeth were $3,000, by the way.
What?
But during an ADR session, he lives in Connecticut. He lives in Connecticut most of the time. Tyler's doing an ADR session, and the dude whips the teeth out, puts them in, and starts doing ADR with the teeth in his mouth.
Yeah, I guess he's been like carting them around, like
he's had them. I'm like, no one knew he had them. He's had them.
Yeah,
he's just waiting for the opportunity.
ADR, just hopping into character for a moment and
sell those on eBay. He'll probably make money.
Well, like we said at the start, we know you guys don't have a lot of time. So like Nico said, we'll definitely try to circle back up with you guys when we can't talk longer. Sure. But is there anything else regarding the movie you'd like to talk about regarding your experiences, or just anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
I mean, we had a blast making this movie. It was also hard. We had a really short schedule. We had a very minimal budget. So it is a lot of, it was movie by Little Horror Village. So I think it's really important to say that because it is a labor of love. And I think people will feel that on screen. I also am really proud of just this movie is gay as fuck. As a gay writer, it's really satisfying to be able to go and create worlds that are queer as hell and have no pushback from people and know the audience is enjoying it and knowing all the right people aren't. So yeah, I'm really proud of that. And I think if people like Freaky and they like Tragedy Girls, they'll have a good time with this. And it's also like an uplifting movie. It's like a true Christmas like story, you know? So yeah, be ready to have your heartstrings tugged a little bit.
Oh, it's definitely going in my holiday rotation.
Oh, great.
Sure.
Love it.
Yeah.
It'll be on Shudder just in time for Christmas too. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Tyler, do you want to share any thoughts?
No, I mean, like I definitely had like such a like a good time kind of, getting to know the cast, and I've been looking forward to bringing up a movie because I'm from Canada originally. I really wanted to I've been looking for the right project to kind of bring up there, and so I'm glad that I grew up putting up a lot of winter, so I'm glad that I was able to make a winter flavored film.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. RLJE Films and Shudder will release It's a Wonderful Knife only in theaters on November 10th, 2023. It will stream on Shudder and AMC Plus and everywhere you rent movies at a later date. A year after saving her town from a psychotic killer on Christmas Eve, Winnie Carruthers' life is less than wonderful. But when she wishes she'd never been born, she finds herself in a nightmare parallel universe and discovers that without her, things could be much, much worse. Now the killer is back, and she must team up with the town misfit to identify the killer and get back to her own reality. It's a Wonderful Life by way of Scream. Really appreciate you guys coming on the show.